Elias Thorne did not inhabit a home. He presided over a fortress. The Skyhaven estate sat atop the highest crest of Viridia's Ethel district, a monolithic statement of quantum power and untouchable wealth. Its facade, a seamless sheet of polarized onyx glass, reflected the sky with such indifference that the house often seemed more like a dimensional tear than a dwelling. Inside, the silence was the most expensive commodity. It was a silence measured not in decibels, but in the crushing weight of unaddressed grief. Elias, the 42-year-old titan of Thorne Quantum Dynamics, TQD, moved through this silence like a ghost in his own mausoleum. He was a man defined by mathematical precision. His life before the incident had been a sequence of perfectly executed binary choices: acquire, innovate, dominate. Now his choices were all variations of failure. Which world-renowned specialist to fly in? Which experimental neuroregeneration therapy to fund? Which private island to offer his daughter as a distraction? Every decision cost millions. None yielded the only dividend he truly craved: the sound of her laughter. That laughter, the vibrant, unpredictable melody of 10-year-old Anya Thorne, had been stolen 14 months prior in the high-speed rail derailment that also claimed the life of his wife, Serafina. Anya survived, but the catastrophic trauma to her spinal column left her with a diagnosis of complete, irreversible paraplegia. The irony was a cruel mathematical equation. Elias, who could manipulate time and space within the digital realm via his proprietary Chronos algorithm, could not reverse a single second of real-world damage. His office, a stark cantilevered box of steel overlooking the city's glittering expanse, was his sanctuary. But even here the pain found him. A small holographic cube on his desk perpetually ran a 9-second loop. Anya, age 7, twirling in a sun-drenched field of lavender, her hair a wild, dark ribbon, her giggles amplified by the recording. Elias would watch it, his jaw tight, his eyes the color of glacial ice, betraying nothing but a faint internal tremor. Elias had replaced grief with control. The Skyhaven estate was protected by a triple-layer protocol: the outer electrified perimeter fence, code Aegis; the internal network of thermal and motion sensors, monitored by armed former Blackwater contractors, code Cerberus; and the absolute unquestioned authority of his personal security director, a man named Corvus. Any unauthorized organic signature crossing the Aegis line was to be detained, interrogated, and immediately removed. No exceptions. Anya lived in the second-floor solarium, a vast room of specialized temperature-controlled glass. She was immobile, yes, but more devastatingly, she was absent. Her eyes, once pools of restless curiosity, now merely tracked the movement of the clouds, or perhaps nothing at all. Her physiotherapist, Dr. Eris, spoke clinically of catastrophic withdrawal, secondary to emotional trauma. She refused to engage with her customized mobility rig, preferring the heavy, velvet blanket over her legs, a blanket that served as both comfort and shroud. Elias spent his evenings observing her from a hidden passage that led to a small, dark viewing alcove above the solarium. He watched his daughter exist in a state of suspended animation, and the cold reality settled. His boundless wealth had only purchased the most beautiful, expensive prison imaginable. He was not unaware of the danger his vulnerability presented. His greatest corporate adversary, Marcus Vance, CEO of the rival Omnicore conglomerate, was a man who saw emotion as a weakness to be exploited. Vance wanted the Chronos algorithm, TQD's multi-billion-dollar AI predictive model, and he knew that Elias's focus was split: a single security breach, a small public scandal, or a prolonged dip in Elias's emotional stability could be the leverage Vance needed. Elias tightened his grip on his coffee mug, the heat a minor comfort against the constant chill in his bones. Control. That was the only thing that mattered. He had control over the market, control over TQD's boards, and absolute control over the physical boundaries of his home, or so he believed. Kyle was an artist forged in ash. He lived, if one could call it that, in the Cinder Wards, the sprawling industrial underbelly of Viridia, where the forgotten infrastructure of the past collapsed into the polluted canals. At 16, Kyle had the lean, wire-tight musculature of perpetual motion and the haunted eyes of someone who had seen too much darkness. His form of dance was not ballet or even hip-hop. It was a chaotic blend of parkour, capoeira, and something entirely his own. A visceral language born from necessity. When the hunger in his gut became too loud, when the ghosts of his past whispered too harshly, Cale moved. He climbed the rust-caked fire escapes. He vaulted over abandoned rail cars. He flowed across broken concrete with a grace that defied his environment. It was his way of silencing the world and, more importantly, silencing the debt he carried. The debt wasn't financial. It was existential. Cale had once been sheltered by a shadow broker, known only as the Weaver, a man who ran a syndicate dealing in stolen industrial data and black market relics. When Cale had fled the Weaver's operation 6 months ago, he hadn't left empty-handed. Tucked into the lining of his tattered leather wrist cuff was the Ethel Drive, a small flash-encrypted module the Weaver desperately wanted back. Cale had no idea what it contained, only that the Weaver's pursuit was relentless and cold. This particular afternoon, the air in the cinder wards was thick with the scent of ozone and decay. Cale was exhausted. He had been tracked by 2 of the Weaver's low-level enforcers, the Snappers, all morning. He needed to disappear, to find a momentary void where the world couldn't reach him. His survival instincts led him on a grueling, miles-long run, a circuitous route that unexpectedly spat him out near the high, reinforced wall of the Ethel district. The wall was a stark, insurmountable boundary. Cale, hiding behind a derelict fusion generator casing, noticed a flaw in the Aegis perimeter. It wasn't a gate or a breach, but a section of the steel lattice where a storm-felled hydropole had impacted months ago. The pole was gone, but the structural integrity had been compromised, creating a narrow, waist-high gap concealed by a dense curtain of overgrown, silver-leafed ivy. Cerberus Protocol 442, Thermal Anomaly Detection. The system was designed to ignore small animals, and Cale, with his practiced control of breathing and stillness, knew how to mimic one. He slipped through the gap, his worn clothes snagging slightly on the wiring. He found himself in the pristine, unnervingly silent grounds of the Skyhaven estate. The air here was clean, filtered, and alien. He saw the shimmering onyx structure of the mansion, and a dizzying sensation of being utterly misplaced washed over him. He was a piece of ash on a polished mirror. He froze beneath a sculpted bonsai grove. Then he saw her. Through the vast crystalline panes of the solarium, Anya sat in her customized high-tech wheelchair, a chair that looked more like a throne of forgotten science. Her small, thin face was turned toward the window, her expression a mask of profound, unmoving sorrow. Cale saw the blankness in her eyes, and it triggered a different kind of memory than the ones the Weaver invoked. Cale knew hunger, cold, and pain. But the look on the girl's face was the deeper, colder starvation, the hunger of the soul. He recognized the exact shade of inner devastation. The look of a child who had accepted that joy was permanently beyond her horizon. I know what it's like when the music stops, Cale thought, his hand instinctively touching the Ethel Drive hidden in his wrist cuff. The drive felt cold, a tiny, dark secret. He remembered the old woman from the cinder wards who used to give him stale bread, telling him, "When the world is too heavy, boy, you move. You show it you ain't stuck." He knew he should run. Every alarm in his survival cortex screamed danger, rich man's territory, Cerberus Protocol. But the sight of Anya's motionless despair was a stronger pull. He didn't want a coin or food or shelter. He wanted to break the glass of her silence. Taking a deep, calculated breath, Cale stepped out from the shadows. His bare feet barely disturbed the meticulously raked sand of the Zen garden. He positioned himself just outside the solarium window, where Anya's gaze seemed fixed. He met her empty eyes, a quicksilver glint of mischief replacing the terror in his own. Without a sound, Cale began to move. Cale's dance was a silent manifesto. He started not with wild jumps, but with a slow, deliberate stutter step, mimicking a faulty old-world automaton trying to remember its programming. His elbows jutted out at impossible angles, his neck craned forward in a ridiculous jerky motion. It was mechanical failure rendered as high comedy. He exaggerated the effort of every non-movement. He pretended to lose his balance, his arms windmilling dramatically, his body slamming against the glass pane with a loud thump that was meant to be startling, not threatening. He crossed his eyes and stuck out his tongue. becoming a caricature of the digital clown he'd seen, flickering on abandoned screens in the wards. Inside the solarium, Anya Thorne was, for the first time in months, not tracking the clouds. Her head tilted slightly, a movement so minuscule that it would have been missed by anyone not professionally trained or profoundly focused on her. She saw the ragged boy, his shirt a canvas of dirt, his shorts patched with salvaged synthetic fiber, the scars on his knees telling tales of falls he barely survived. She saw the exhaustion etched around his mouth, but she also saw the brilliant, ferocious energy in his eyes. The third time Kyle pretended to step on an invisible landmine, leaping 2 feet in the air and landing with a comical, wobbly collapse, a sound escaped Anya's lips. It wasn't a laugh, not yet. It was a soft, choked expulsion of air, a sound of surprise, a sound of recognition. Kyle saw it. That small puff of breath was his victory. He changed tactics instantly. The jerky robot transformed into a graceful, predatory cat. He began to flow, his movements liquid and low, tracing impossible shapes on the grass. He used the reflection in the glass, twirling his thin body, becoming a blur of motion. It was raw, defiant beauty. Anya lifted one hand, the movement slow, almost agonizingly deliberate. She did not clap, but she placed her palm against the glass, right where Kale was a swirling vortex of motion. And then it happened. A single clear, resonant sound broke the fortress silence. Anya Thorne laughed. It was a sharp, glorious burst, followed by a wheezing, breathless chain of giggles. The sound was like a shattered crystalline structure, finally vibrating to its original frequency. Elias Thorne, watching from the high alcove, felt the blood drain from his face. It was the laugh, unmistakable, pure, the sound he had failed to conjure with every advanced medical procedure and every million-dollar resource. His reaction was a layered, conflicting sequence: rage, the protocol, an intrusion. Cerberus failed. Corvus will be fired. This feral street rat has breached Aegis. He must be removed. Stunned observation, the father. Anya is moving. Her back is straighter. Her arms are active. She's reaching. She's alive. Calculated risk, the Titan. This asset, whatever it is invaluable. Protect the asset. Neutralize the risk. He descended to the ground floor, his footsteps echoing on the polished marble. Corvus, his security director, a man whose expression never wavered from professional menace, was already there, receiving a red alert notification. Protocol 442. Organic anomaly detected. Perimeter 3B. Status: non-hostile engagement with principal subject, Corvus recited, his hand already moving toward his sidearm. Stand down. Corvus? Elias's voice was low, cutting through the sterile air. You will terminate the alert. You will issue a level 0 silence code to all personnel. You will not move, you will not speak, and you will not acknowledge the boy. Sir, with respect, the security threat, the only threat is the continued silence in my daughter's life, Elias interrupted, his glacial eyes meeting Corvus's. Do it. Elias stepped out into the manicured garden, the late afternoon sun casting his imposing shadow over the dancing boy. Kale stopped mid-vault, dropping out of his focused trance. He saw the figure, tall, impeccably tailored in a dark, expensive suit, radiating an aura of lethal, quiet power. Elias Thorne. The man who owned the sky, Kale knew this look. It wasn't the crude, drunken rage of a cinder ward landlord. It was the absolute total command of a god who had just found a worm in his apple. Kale prepared to run, calculating the shortest route back to the gap in the ivy. Wait. Elias's voice was the sound of steel on ice. Anya's voice, sharp and surprisingly strong, cut through the tension. Daddy, don't! Don't scare him away. He's my friend. Elias ignored his daughter for a moment, his focus fixed on Kyle. The boy was thin, malnourished, his body marked by countless street skirmishes. But his eyes, they were deep wells of intelligence and defiant exhaustion. You breached my perimeter, Elias stated, his tone flat. That is grounds for immediate detainment and prosecution. Who sent you? Kale held his ground. He didn't flinch, didn't stammer. Nobody sent me, sir. I saw her. She looked like she was waiting for rain that wouldn't fall. I know that look. So I danced. For what? Payment? I don't dance for payment, sir. I dance to prove I can still move. Today I danced for her to prove she could still feel. Elias studied him. He didn't believe in altruism. He believed in code, in cause and effect. Yet the undeniable, irrefutable effect was Anya's rediscovered laughter. "What is your name, boy?" "Kyle?" Anya wheeled herself closer, her small hand reaching out and grasping Kyle's filthy, calloused one. "Kyle makes the sun come out, Daddy. Don't let the sun go." Elias looked at the connection between them, the grubby hand of the street artist and the pale, tiny hand of the heiress. It was a bridge built across the chasm of their two worlds. "Corvus," Elias called without turning. "Prepare the boy for intake. He will be cleaned, medically evaluated, and quartered in the North Annex, Room 4. Kyle froze, his eyes wide with suspicion. This wasn't a threat. It was a command that changed the fundamental rules of his life. "Sir, I don't understand." "It's simple, Kyle," Elias said, a fractional softening in his voice, the first humanity he had shown in months. "You are an unexpected variable in my most critical project, my daughter's recovery. Variables are controlled. You stay here. You will continue to interact with Anya under my direct supervision. If you attempt to flee or if you deceive me, my resources will find you, and your return to the Cinder Wards will feel like a mercy." He turned back to Anya, who was beaming. "You may stay for today, Kale, but know this. You are now part of a protocol. And in this house, protocols are never broken." The North Annex was a gilded cage, but to Kale it was a palace, clean clothes, an actual bed, soft, almost offensively luxurious, and 3 guaranteed meals a day. The medical evaluation was invasive, but revealed only chronic malnutrition and a collection of old, poorly healed fractures. He submitted to the surveillance, the protocols, the silence of the guards. He knew this was not kindness. It was control. Elias Thorne was treating him like a bioasset, a unique strain of antidepressant. Kyle's daily routine became a strict schedule. 10:00 a.m., physiotherapy observation. 2:00 p.m., solarium session with Anya. 5:00 p.m., monitored meal. The sessions with Anya were unlike anything the estate had ever witnessed. Kyle didn't treat her like a patient. He treated her like an audience and sometimes a co-conspirator. "Your spine is broken, but your mind is still a firework," Kyle told her one day, leaning close to her wheelchair. "We can't get the legs to work yet, but we can teach the rest of you to dance. We start with rhythm." He developed the echo game, a complex rhythmic clapping routine. Kyle would execute an intricate, syncopated pattern, and Anya had to mirror it with her hands, forcing coordination and focus she hadn't needed since the accident. Her hands, initially weak and fumbling, grew stronger. Her frustration when she missed a beat was the first true emotion Elias had seen from her since Serafina's death, a healthy, active rage against a challenge. Elias, watching from the alcove, logged the data points. Hand strength plus 12%, focus duration plus 300%, verbal engagement plus 250%. But Kyle, though physically safe, felt the net tightening. He sensed the unspoken danger of his situation, and his past was catching up in insidious ways. Meanwhile, in a sprawling penthouse suite across the city, Marcus Vance, Elias Thorne's corporate rival, received an alert from his deep penetration internal security program targeting TQD. Vance wasn't looking for a corporate spy inside Skyhaven. He was looking for a technical weakness in the Aegis defense grid. What he found instead was an anomaly, a small, almost undetectable data burst that originated from inside the Skyhaven perimeter, but was completely unsourced by TQD's own internal network. The burst was a fleeting, low-power signal, the signature of a specific, encrypted flash module that Vance immediately recognized. It was the Ethel drive, a component manufactured by a defunct TQD subsidiary, known to carry sensitive, heavily encoded legacy data. Vance had been hunting for it for months, believing it held the original uncut specifications for the Kronos algorithm, a vulnerability that could bring Elias down. Vance narrowed his eyes. The homeless boy. Elias Thorne was protecting a street urchin who had somehow smuggled a priceless corporate relic into the most secure facility in the world. This was not a weakness. It was a weapon. Vance initiated a quiet, untraceable command. Activate broker protocol on the Ethel anomaly. Retrieve and neutralize. Back at Skyhaven, Kale felt the pressure. He had been trying to find a way to dispose of the Ethel drive. He knew it was toxic cargo. One evening, while pretending to rest by the solarium window, after the guards had changed shifts, a nearly invisible laser dot appeared on his chest. It was a sniper's sight, but it didn't hold steady. It pulsed a code. 3 days, you know what I want, bring it out. Broker. Kyle felt a cold dread that surpassed his usual survival fear. The Weaver had found him, or at least the broker. The Weaver's ruthless enforcer had. The broker had eyes everywhere, and now he knew Kyle was inside the Thorn Fortress. Kyle's dancing became erratic. His focus shattered. He flinched at shadows. Elias noticed the change instantly. The data points turned negative. Kyle's focus, 50%. Stress hormones detected in post-session bio-readings, plus 40%. Kyle, Elias said, entering the North Annex room without preamble one night. Your performance is degrading. You are exhibiting fear. That is an unacceptable variable. Kyle, standing stiffly by the window, didn't turn. I'm just tired, sir. I'm not used to soft beds. Don't lie to me. My system tracks every flicker of emotion, every change in heart rate, every minute oscillation in the air quality you exhale. You are being threatened. Tell me what it is. Kyle hesitated, the ethal drive burning against his wrist. He looked at Elias, the man who was simultaneously his captor and the guardian of his new, fragile hope. If he revealed the drive, Elias would likely dissect him for information. If he kept silent, the broker would hurt Anya. It's nothing, sir. Just old ghosts from the wards. They can't touch me here. Elias took a step closer. Everything that crosses my perimeter becomes my property, Kyle. That includes your ghosts. You will tell me what the threat is, or I will assume you are the threat and deactivate the entire protocol. It's a mistake to bring this in, sir, Kyle finally whispered, his voice cracking. It's about a stolen data stick. It's nothing to do with you. It's just a way to pay off a debt so they leave me alone. A data stick, Elias repeated, his eyes narrowing. Corvus, scan the North Annex, all personal effects, for any unrecognized electronic media. Kyle knew it was over. He unclasped the wrist cuff and threw the small black module onto the marble floor. It clattered, silent and deadly. Corvus, who was already running a deep scan from his wrist-mounted interface, gasped. Sir, the anomaly signature. It matches the missing TQD ethal prototype, encrypted with legacy Chronos subroutines. How did you get this, boy? Elias's cold focus shifted instantly from Kale to the drive. He picked it up, holding the corporate relic as if it were a dirty piece of coal. The debt Kale spoke of, the stolen goods, it wasn't just a street crime. It was corporate espionage, and it led directly to the Chronos algorithm. Elias spent the next 24 hours in his office, dissecting the ethal drive. The encryption was old, deliberately obtuse, designed to hide the true contents. It wasn't the core Chronos algorithm, but something far more insidious. A complete, minute-by-minute log of all TQD security, R&D, and corporate communications for the year leading up to the rail crash. Elias realized the terrifying implication. The ethal drive was not intended as a tool for corporate espionage. It was an insurance policy. The Weaver wasn't just a data broker. He was a cleaner, hired to cover a massive corporate crime, and the data led inevitably to Marcus Vance, who was trying to pin a past disaster on Elias. The stolen stick was the key to understanding the incident, the crash that stole Serafina and crippled Anya. Elias called Kale back to his office, his face pale and strained. He was no longer the detached, calculating CEO, but a man confronted by a past he had only grieved, never truly investigated. The drive contains information that connects Marcus Vance to the sabotage of the high-speed rail line, Elias stated, laying the drive on the desk. The derailment that took your mother, Anya, he corrected, his voice catching slightly. You didn't steal a simple data stick, Kale. You carried the truth of a murder. Kyle stared at him, his youthful face a mix of fear and dawning comprehension. The broker kept telling me it was my family's debt, that I had to give it back or pay the price. He said it was an old family relic I found. It's a debt of silence. They were going to leverage you to get the drive back, neutralize the data, and then liquidate you to ensure silence, Elias explained. The words stripped bare of emotion. The emotional core of the story intensified here. Kyle was not just dancing for a rich girl. He was unknowingly carrying the evidence of the crime that made her crippled and orphaned. The connection between them deepened into a tragic, symbiotic destiny. "You have to leave, Kale," Elias said, the order brutal and final. "Vance knows the drive is here. He's closing the loop. I can't protect you and Anya simultaneously. If you stay, the broker will use Anya against you. If you leave, I can use you as bait to draw out Vance and buy Anya time." "I won't leave," Kale said, the words surprising even himself. He was a creature of survival, of flight, but the thought of Anya, alone in that sterile, silent room, made the thought of the cinder wards unpalatable. "I made her laugh. I made her move. I am the protocol, sir. If I leave, she goes back to the silence. Sentiment is a weakness, Kale. I speak from experience." "No, sir. Hope isn't weakness. It's a risk, and I am willing to take it for her. And you know why? Because I've seen her eyes and they don't look like mine anymore. They look like they might actually see a future. The broker is coming for the drive. Let him come. I'll make the handoff. I'll make a diversion. But I will not leave until she stands." Elias looked at Kale not as a variable but as a person, a strange, raw mirror of his own forgotten courage. He saw the genuine, fierce devotion in the boy's exhausted eyes. Elias realized he had underestimated Kale. He wasn't just a dancer. He was a warrior. "Very well," Elias said, a slow, predatory smile touching his lips. "We will rewrite the protocol. We will not run. We will fight. But this is no longer a street fight, Kyle. This is TQD versus Omnicore, and we don't lose." Elias mobilized his resources with chilling efficiency. He used Kale's information to establish communication with the broker, setting up a meeting at the Skyhaven estate for the exchange of the Ethel Drive. The terms, 1 hour after sundown, in the high-tech physiotherapy studio adjacent to the solarium. Elias had one advantage. The broker, and by extension Vance, thought Elias was distracted, vulnerable, and unaware of the drive's true contents. Elias would let them believe he was trading the drive for Kale's safety, hiding his true objective, leveraging the drive to get the full confession. The scene of the climax. The physiotherapy studio was a sterile white space, dominated by a gravity-defying harness rig and a vast interactive mirror. This was where Kale and Anya held their most intense sessions, Kale teaching her muscle memory through rhythmic movement, Anya battling the neural silence. It was scheduled to be Kale's ultimate challenge with Anya, to use the gravity rig only for safety, and for her to attempt to achieve 3 seconds of unsupported standing. The session began at 5 p.m. Kyle, dressed in a new, flexible, graphite-gray uniform Elias had provided, helped Anya into the harness. The tension in the room was palpable. Corvus, the security chief, monitored the entire estate from a discreet panel hidden behind the mirror. Elias watched from a glass panel, waiting for the signal that the broker's team had breached the outer perimeter. "Ready, Anya?" Kyle whispered, his voice shaking slightly. He wasn't scared of the broker. He was scared of failing Anya now, at the moment of truth. "Ready, Kale," she replied, her own small face set with grim determination. Kale started their rhythm, a complex, accelerating beat of hand claps and foot stamps. He moved around her, a constant, focused energy source, urging her to find the connection between her mind and her motionless body. "Find the rhythm, Anya. Feel the ground. You're not stuck, you're just waiting for the music. Breathe!" Anya pushed her small hands onto the arms of her wheelchair, her back ramrod straight. She strained, her face turning crimson with effort. Her legs for months had been cold dead weights. Now they trembled with a faint, almost invisible vibration. At 5:45 p.m. Corvus spoke, his voice a low hiss in Elias's ear. "Perimeter breach confirmed. Multiple armed intruders. The broker's team on schedule. Vance is watching remotely. Execute counter protocol," Elias ordered, his voice steady. "But do not engage inside the solarium's radius. We give them the illusion of control. 2 figures, the broker, a thick-necked man with predatory eyes, and a single, heavily built mercenary slammed the studio door open. "Stop right there, street trash." The broker roared. "The drive! Hand it over, and we let the rich girl live to sit another day." Kale froze mid-movement, shielding Anya with his body. The sudden violent invasion of the sterile space sent a shockwave through Anya. Her breathing became ragged. "Kale, no!" Anya screamed, an active, frantic panic overwhelming her. Elias stepped out from his viewing panel, a small, Dark object, the ethel drive, held casually between two fingers. "The transaction is with me," Elias said, his voice flat, his focus entirely on the broker. "You will take the drive, and you will sign the legally binding confession that this boy Cale is released from all debts and obligations owed to the Weaver or Omnicorp, effective immediately. Or I send the unencrypted contents of this drive to the global market regulators, bringing down TQD, Omnicorp, and your entire pathetic operation." The broker stared at Elias, stunned. "You know what's on this? How?" "I wrote the original code," Elias replied simply. The broker lunged forward, but Corvus and two strategically placed contractors dropped from a ceiling vent in a terrifying display of military precision, surrounding the mercenary. The chaos, the shouting, the presence of armed men, had a paradoxical effect on Anya. It broke through the wall of her despair. She wasn't an invalid. She was a target. She was a shield. She realized Cale was sacrificing himself for her. "I won't let you," Anya whispered, the effort pushing tears from her eyes. She didn't use her hands. She pushed from her core, an act of sheer furious will. Cale, still frozen, felt a tremor in her chair. Slowly, agonizingly, her knees began to unlock. Her muscles screamed in protest, but the fear, the anger, and the desperate rhythm Cale had instilled in her, over weeks of relentless practice, took over. 1 second. Her feet pressed against the floor. Elias, confronting the broker, glanced back and froze. The broker, too, stopped, captivated by the impossible sight. 2 seconds. Anya's hips aligned. 3 seconds. She was upright, trembling violently, her arms hanging loose but standing. She was unsupported, held up only by the harness rig acting as a safety line above her. She looked at the broker, not with fear, but with magnificent, furious defiance. "You can't take him. He's mine. He's my brother!" The word brother, ringing in the chaos, broke the tension. It was the absolute final victory. Elias, his own hands shaking not with fear but with overwhelming, impossible pride, used the distraction. He lunged, delivering a single calculated strike, a lifetime of pent-up rage channeled into a self-defense move, and dropped the broker. Corvus. "Secure the asset," Elias commanded, his eyes still fixed on his standing daughter. The mercenary was neutralized. The broker was cuffed, and the ethel drive was secured as evidence. The danger was over. Cale rushed back to Anya, catching her as she collapsed, panting and laughing, back into the safety of her wheelchair. "You did it," Cale whispered, his own breath ragged. "You stood up, Anya, you stood up." Anya clung to him, weeping tears of pure, unrestrained joy. "We did it, Cale, we danced." Elias knelt beside them, the cold veneer shattered. He didn't speak of the drive, or Vance, or the corporate espionage. He only reached out, placing one hand on Cale's shoulder, the other on Anya's. "You are brave, both of you," Elias said, his voice raw, thick with the emotion he had spent a decade suppressing. "You have taught me the true meaning of the Chronos algorithm. It is not about controlling time, Cale. It is about seizing the present moment and rewriting the future." That night, Elias Thorne called his lawyers. The process was swift and irreversible. Cale, the homeless dancer, was formally entered into the Thorne family registry, recognized as a ward of the state under Elias's guardianship, protected legally from the Weaver, the broker, and the corporate shadow of Marcus Vance. The headlines that followed the dramatic events at Skyhaven were a cacophony of confusion, outrage, and reluctant admiration. Marcus Vance was arrested days later, the ethel drive providing the smoking gun needed to connect him to the rail disaster. Thorne Quantum Dynamics soared, not because of a new invention, but because of the sheer, audacious integrity of its CEO. Elias Thorne was no longer the Ice Titan. He was the father who fought a corporate war to save his children. 4 years later, the Skyhaven estate had fundamentally changed. The rigid protocols were still in place, but they were warmed by life. Anya, now 14, no longer needed the high-tech wheelchair. She walked with the aid of advanced, custom-fitted braces and a carbon fiber cane, a rhythmic, determined gait that Cale affectionately called her battle march. She was enrolled in a specialized science academy, her mind sharp and focused, her laughter constant. Cale, now 20, had channeled his kinetic energy into a purpose beyond survival. Elias had seen the raw artistic genius in his dance and enrolled him in Viridia's prestigious Academy of Applied Arts and Movement. Kyle excelled, not only mastering traditional forms but pioneering the echo principle, a therapy using rhythm and synchronized movement to rewire neural pathways. He also served as the lead designer for the Kronos Foundation, a philanthropic venture Elias created to fund arts and rehabilitation programs in the Cinder. Wards Kale often stood in the newly renovated solarium, which was now a sun-drenched dance studio. Anya would watch him practice her movements, tapping her cane rhythmically. "You never told me what was on the drive," Kyle said to Elias one afternoon as they watched Anya practice. Elias, a softening evident in the lines around his eyes, smiled faintly. "I told you. The log of a disaster. The proof of a crime. But you want to know the twist? The real Kronos algorithm was never the AI code. It was the realization that our greatest power isn't prediction, but adaptation. You, Kale, adapted to the streets, and you forced Anya to adapt to her body. You are the Kronos algorithm, the factor that changed the timeline." He placed a hand on Kale's shoulder, a simple paternal gesture. "You made me see that true wealth is not the assets you control, but the kinship you find. You are my son, Kale, and your sister is walking because you refuse to be silent." Kale looked from Elias to Anya, who was now spinning slowly with her cane, her movement imperfect but filled with defiant joy. The cold of the Cinder wards, the grief of the high-speed rail, the terror of the broker, all faded into the past. They were no longer defined by the trauma they had shared, but by the hope they had built, step by arduous, glorious step. The fortress was finally truly a home,